Bobby, today is our third interview on Near FM. We have in the past done interviews about alcohol and cannabis. What inspired me to get in touch with you for this interview today, Bobby, is that I saw a video from a Dublin City Councillor last week which showed loads of cylinders of nitrous oxide or laughing gas cylinders in a greenfield part of a suburb of Dublin that young people had been using. Most of the people you deal with in your day job as a psychologist, Bobby, are, I believe, young people. Can you tell me, Bobby, or give me an overview of this issue of nitrous oxide in your own personal experience ever since it became a big issue in many parts of Dublin and Ireland today?
Okay. Yeah, Darren. Certainly nitrous oxide has been increasingly on our radar over the last 2 or 3 years. So as you say, I work in adolescent addiction services south of the Liffey, and a growing minority of the young people who attend the service, it's been part of their pattern of substance use. In most cases, I suppose it's alongside some other drugs, but in some cases it's the main substance. And in terms of what it is, Darren, nitrous oxide is a gas. It's been around and available, I suppose, for decades. I'm not really sure why it's become so trendy or fashionable right now. The women, I suppose, listening to this, when they have encountered this, because during delivery, during labour, sometimes gas and air is used. That's actually nitrous oxide is the gas there. So it has a slight anaesthetic or pain-killing effect. But when taken in large doses, it has a really strong intoxication effect. It's like getting very drunk very quickly. So it's typically consumed, some of the gas from a canister is put into a balloon, then the contents of the balloon are inhaled, which are pure nitrous oxide, that induces a real intense but short-lived intoxication that might only last sort of 2, 3, 4 minutes. And then what tends to happen is people will sort of refill another balloon, inhale that, get another 2 or 3 minutes of intoxication, and they tend to repeat that cycle. And yeah, it's become more common for, as I said, reasons I don't really understand over the last 4 or 5 years. Across the age ranges, it's also big at festivals, it seems. But this is, maybe groups of teenagers who go into the park with a canister, instead of drinking flaggable cider, which might have happened, 20 years ago. The nitrous oxide is replacing some of that type of behaviour.
And Bobby, why is it a dangerous drug? Like, what are the side effects from it that are dangerous?
Well, like any drug, first of all, people can become addicted to it. In other words, that they sort of lose control of it, and they find that they just constantly need to do this, which is one problem. I suppose another one is that while people are very intoxicated, albeit briefly, they can fall over or injure themselves. They can also leave themselves vulnerable to attack and assault, potentially. Where people use it repeatedly, and I mean sort of, they're doing this 4 or 5 times a week, week after week, over a number of months. What we have unfortunately begun to see in some of our health services are young people presenting with nerve damage. That the nitrous oxide depletes some vitamins that are necessary to maintain the nerves in your spinal cord. They can sort of get damaged, basically, and some people are ending up with a partial paraplegia, as in, they're losing partial function in their legs as a result of their nitrous oxide use. And that doesn't necessarily fully recover itself. That's a very serious side effect. Certainly there was a report from Beaumont Hospital, I think it was last summer, just about the number of cases along that line that they were seeing. And I suppose the other health problem that we have encountered is, particularly with these bigger canisters, where people take gas out of them, every 3 or 4 minutes for a prolonged period of time. The canister gets colder and colder each time you refill your balloon. If you're very intoxicated, people aren't noticing how cold the canister is getting. If they've placed that canister between their legs, it can actually, it can reach a point where people end up with frostbite. They end up with sort of cold-induced damage done to their skin, sometimes in their thighs, if they have the canister between their thighs. So, plastic surgeons have had to come in to deal with full-thickness frostbite injuries in some young people as a result of that type of issue. So it's raising sort of strange and unusual challenges like that, I suppose, Darren, which are quite different to those which we have with other drugs. And another one of the odd things about nitrous oxide is that it's legal. It's used in canisters to produce whipped cream. So people might be familiar with the cans that you can see in some cafes, that they'll sort of squeeze the can and it blasts out a little bit of whipped cream on top of your cake. The gas that's in that can is nitrous oxide, which is why sometimes these smaller little canisters are called whippets. But then there's also larger canisters or larger containers, and they're sometimes go by the brand name of fast gas. But again, it's been so legally online. Some shops, as I understand it, sell it. I suppose that's a big worry in terms of trying to address this new phenomenon.
Okay, Bobby, as you mentioned there, it is actually legal in Ireland to sell nitrous oxide. So bearing in mind that it's legal, Bobby, what are you calling on the government or Department of Health to do on the issue?
It's genuinely tricky, Darren, because, on the one hand, I suppose you'd like parents to be tuned into this risk. On the other hand, one of the nervousness, one of the issues that makes drug prevention people nervous is that where behavior is beginning to become fashionable and is maybe, common enough, if you generate too much hype around it with young people, if you ran a big national campaign highlighting the hazards of this, well, that might, inform a lot of people. The worry is it might, cause another subset of people to perk up and think, oh, that sounds interesting, I must try and get hold of that, when they haven't quite heard of it. So there's a balance to be struck, I suppose, in how we communicate the information, but there's definitely some consideration needs to be given there as to how we make people more aware. I know there's been legislation and action in other countries to try and reduce access to this product. So, okay, industry maybe needs it for some purposes, but we've got to maybe do a better job at ensuring that it's not leaking out into general public supply. So it could be that there's steps can be taken along those lines, but it's genuinely a tricky issue to address from a prevention perspective.